And we are live. Hi, everyone. Hello, and welcome to my very two special colleagues. So let's go over the names because the two of them are very tricky to pronounce. So let's do, to simplify things, Kevin. I think can we call you Kevin, or what's your Irish?
Quiveen. No, Kevin's fine. Kevin's fine.
Quivin. Okay, that's actually is a very lovely Irish name. So Kevin or Quivin. And then we have Słowik. Is that how you say it in Polish?
Yeah, exactly. It's Sławek or Sławomir.
Okay, so that's I practice that quite a lot to be able to say it. So guys, thank you so much for joining today. We're going to be talking about engineering grade 3D meshes. But before we deep dive into the topic and we let people come into the live, why don't you briefly tell them what you're going to be bringing on the table today? Kevin, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I'm a product consultant at Virtuosity, covering all things reality modeling. So I'll be kind of focusing on the problems kind of certain features solve. So more on the kind of business focused aspect, basically, where Sławik is pure whiz kid.
Cool. Right. Thank you. And how about you, Sławik?
Yeah, just like Kev said, I will be covering most the technical stuff. I will be the one who you will be contacting with in case of training and consultancy as a surveyor or a scanning specialist. So yeah,
okay,
mainly
that's great.
Stuff.
So our technical guy at Virtuosity.
Yes. Exactly.
Cool. So let me start while people join in. Why we are talking about this topic today. We are starting a tech talk live series in the next few months, hopefully. So maybe until the end of the year, if the guys are available. Every 2 weeks, we'll be addressing a topic. And we launched a poll a few weeks ago. And actually, most of let me just go back to the screen here. This is not the one, actually. This is the second one. But anyways, like there was previously to this poll, there was one that we were asking, like, which are the topics or, what are the key elements of your photogrammetry workflow? Actually, that was the question. And the key one and the most voted one was the 3D meshes, the 3D meshing capabilities. So that's what we decided to start with this topic, which is one of our key value propositions for ContextCapture. And then in preparation for this event, we launched another poll asking what is your primary data source for photogrammetry and 3D modeling projects. So I think this was very interesting. Most people, 51% was aerial terrestrial imagery, no surprise there, followed by terrestrial laser scanning. And we also had some people from mobile mapping. So Kevin, tell us a bit more about, ContextCapture, engineering grade 3D meshes. What are we going to be talking about today?
Yeah, okay. So I'd say first thing off the bat is ContextCapture. We're all about choice and we'll never limit you to a certain hardware. We're fairly hardware agnostic. So in terms of photogrammetry, it can be a drone, a phone, DSLR, a camera attached to a pigeon, it doesn't matter. And it's the same then about the laser scans too. So you can have, static or mobile, and it's a great way of, like why we offer this. Obviously, it's a great way of utilizing existing data from your client. So if your client, say you're working with a municipality, they have some laser scan data and you're going to do a drone survey, why not incorporate it into it? Same goes with a complex environment, and it just gives you more options. And obviously, the way we do accept photos and laser scans, we can produce what's called a hybrid mesh, and Słavik's going to talk about this because it's a fairly popular kind of output these days because it's the best of both worlds. It has the geometry of the laser scan, but then the textual information of the photos. So yeah, like you'll see there's plenty of options. We can take in plenty of different hardware, but also then we have the, let's say, the presets and the fine tuning to kind of match that approach. So it might be a bit complicated, but we always encourage versatility and variety in this. So yeah, it's a big thing. We don't want to limit you to any particular kind of method.
Okay, so that's we don't limit the choice of hardware, of software. So we are completely hardware agnostic. So why don't you show us something on the screen? We are seeing ContextCapture.
Yes.
Please, sorry to interrupt, but keep the comments coming in. I'm gonna just start following on your
Exactly.
comments in a second. So keep them coming.
All right. So, okay, just to also kind of complete the Kevin's comment on the agnostic and our hardware agnostic approach, is that of course we are receiving some data from each of the mobile or terrestrial laser scanning products. So you can see that we are able to load both of them. So in case of importing static scan, we will just need position of the scanner, scanning position. And in case of mobile scan, we'll need require some trajectory file, of course. So this was really important that we are reading those files here, those clouds. And of course, because we are operating still in Bentley software, then we will be operating sooner or later in our POD format, which is also native one for the point clouds, really optimized in case of 3D modeling, handling the big data source, etc. So even in this case, in this example, we can see one of the, let's say, most popular terrestrial laser scanning system on the market from Faro, in this case. And just, of course, a piece of the bigger project here, cut, so you can still recognize there as a scan position even from the far away. Maybe that was the whole station. We just need one area from the whole project. We are able to read it, and then we are of course able to measure with the photogrammetry. Now the case is how we would like to gather the photogrammetry. As Kev mentioned, there is actually no limits here. So if you handle, let's say, top drone on the market, not another problem. Let me just show. If that would be the DSLR camera, no problem. If that would be phase one camera with this 100 megapixel, that is also not a problem. You will produce really high quality mesh. I just
we have actually we have a webinar about with iFly on Netherlands covering that the phase one camera. If anyone interested, I will share the link afterwards.
Exactly. So what is first of all important, it is not required for you to have point cloud or photogrammetry covered in 100%. If you will have inside of the building scan with the terrestrial laser scanning, you will create only a mesh inside from point cloud, basically. If you have only part of the terrain taken with the drone, you'll create a mesh only from the photogrammetry there. So software won't tell you, okay, you decided to go both, but you miss spot information in some part. No, it's creating everything together. So at the end, you're getting results with the proper texture. For example, in this case, that could be also not only the thing about the texture, but also that could be some inaccessible area for you. So if that is some tall building, you won't be able to go and scan the roof with the terrestrial laser scanning, because maybe that was the highest building in the neighborhood. Actually, that was one of the major problems I met when I was a scanning specialist in the past. That's okay. We tried, for example, to get a view on the roof, but then you have to find a taller building, and then also you have to, for example, use a really powerful laser scanner with a huge range.
Yeah,
here we can just exchange.
I would say that's one thing that we came across quite in utilities all the time. So when the scanning was done on the main route, kind of even just getting behind the machines, you could just simply slip a camera behind the machines in really complex tight spaces, and then incorporate them into the kind of main survey. So yeah, it was really handy. It's really easy to get like kind of in accessible areas, especially with
So,
drone.
But the idea, so tell me again, just for people, because I see people are keep joining now. So what we are looking at here specifically, so this is coming from photogrammetry
and from point cloud together.
And from point cloud. So this is a hybrid, what we call a hybrid model, right?
Exactly.
But that doesn't, like one of the key capabilities of context capture is that it allows you to process whichever data source you have. So we are not, we are completely hardware agnostic. So you can use any type of, well, I'm not sure I can say any type, but Kevin, maybe you can help me here. You can use many different data sources.
The only thing we can't really use is a satellite, because it's a push broom system and it's one continuous long photo, so it kind of goes against the principles of photogrammetry. So that's really it. Other than that, we're pretty much like even thermal stuff and everything. It's no problem to us.
There's also a way for that. Also, maybe you have to mention the panoramic cameras. You can create some rig containing few cameras, of course, and then build a system which will take a panoramic picture built from smaller one, but you can still like create some workflow for that.
And so if you kindly go back to the context capture main window, because I think that's what is most interesting at the moment. So tell us a bit more about the different data sources and how you import them, and maybe we can move on with the next topic then, Kevin.
Yes, actually I just prepared one here, so
Okay, cool.
So I mentioned about terrestrial and mobile laser scanning. So you will see that in this case, you are getting the trajectory file, just a path showing where the, of course, scanning system, where it was positioned, of course, due to the timestamp. As you see, when I am just closing in, it's just loading more details, more and more, as you see. And here you will have example with the static scan once again. So some power plant, you need just to get good level of details. Yeah. So Kev, you would also have some examples to show. That just
so sorry guys, we have a question from Bradford who's asking, if you haven't mentioned it, what about using mobile photos, point cloud and drone data in one? We have a couple of examples with imagery coming from phone and drone and terrestrial handheld camera from Sweden. Remember that one? So I'll share that link with you, Bradford,
Siemens
but I
model?
haven't seen...
Siemens model is quite good as well. That's what drone, terrestrial and scans and everything as well. It's really cool.
That's true. Actually, I didn't remember of that one. Yeah, so I'll share that link with you, Bradford. So it's absolutely possible to combine all these data sources in one 3D mesh.
Both indoors and outdoors as well, in one, depending on how your project is set up. So yeah, very much possible. We have plenty of the basis for those digital twins that are both outdoor and indoor. So really cool.
Exactly. Everything is based on our type points, as you will set them on the pictures, or you will use ground control points, for example, together with the surveyor, which I always will recommend at some point, because then you can create independent source of the survey control with the total station. So you have like full control on the accuracy, on the outcome. And of course, this is independent source. So even if there could be a mistake in photogrammetry, which always is possible, then you will have independent source of control.
Yeah. I think we should. Do you want to jump into the actual UI so we can go through the kind of parameters and all the different kind of settings?
Sure. Let me just.
While we're here, we might as well.
Yeah. Let you jump.
Go for it. Do you have it on your screen?
Also,
if you can even share it.
In the meantime, just reminding everyone live, we have about 70 people live. So just remind you that you can scan the QR code and that will take you to, you can request a live demo with our lovely team, one of them being Kevin, and a free trial license. So if you fill in that form, that will we will get in touch with you ASAP. Cool. So what are we seeing here now, Sobik, Kevin?
So I would, if I were you, I'd jump into the actual reproduction type of tab. So at least we can go and just focus on the 3D meshing, because we like the most popular topic was the meshing, and we'll go through AT another day because
Yes.
it is quite
Exactly.
complex
So
and
actually,
good. So we're just
let me
going to nerd out
just.
on the reproduction for this stage.
Okay. So in this case, first I would go for reconstruction here.
Yep.
That could
Yep.
be
We can go through just
all
the
of the
general
tabs.
things. Yeah, which
Yes.
is, so this is kind of, we know that some, because we are fairly varied in what we offer and the hardware we tackle and type of projects and environments. So our settings kind of match that. So you'll see this. You get kind of, some software can be like a black box. You throw in stuff, you get out stuff. You can't really control it. We kind of take the opposite approach. It's for people that really want to get nitty gritty. So within, this is a good example, within the kind of spatial framework kind of tab here, you would have something that I really like, and it's tiling. And so tiling is a really great one. Basically, what we do is we split a project into different tiles and allocate a certain percentage of RAM to each tile. So in normal speak, basically it doesn't blow up your computer. So
Exactly.
you can process
Let me
stuff on
just
the
film
same
it.
computer and then work away, kind of doing editing or doing some CAD work on the same
So
PC.
could you use what type of laptop are we talking about? Do you need to invest a lot of money in a good processing laptop, or could you use? So tell me, why is this an important feature?
It's an important feature because it basically doesn't tank your PC. So sometimes what we've heard is people can be running a photogrammetry software, and because photogrammetry is so process heavy, all its resources are dedicated to that one project. So that means that you just have to leave that PC just working away. Whereas this approach, it's going to dedicate a limited amount of RAM. It will chug through the project, but then you can still be utilizing that PC. So generally, we find people, if they have let's say an average kind of gaming PC, it actually would work perfectly fine with context
Exactly.
capture. So you don't need one of those mad crazy CAD workstations. Like, there's no
Yes.
need for it.
Do we have a minimum specs requirements that we can share with them after the event? Maybe.
Yeah, we actually have it broken into minimum, medium, and maximum.
I was like, oh, I'm getting into dangerous territory here. Maybe we don't.
It keeps like it just keeps upgrading. You have all the M.dot stuff and everything now. The hard drives that can get really, really cool results. So one PC can push out maybe 50 gigapixels worth of data per 24 hours, which is insane. So yeah, you can get really nerdy if you wanted to on it.
Talking about updates, sorry, Kev, because that reminded me, we have a question from Matt asking, how often is the context capture camera database updated? If you happen to know that.
You probably know more about it
It's
than me, but
more.
we update it periodically, but also you can throw in any requests to our team and we'll update it for you. So if we're missing something, like, we'll do
Okay,
it.
actually, it's mostly updated on request. So let's say that you have some unusual type of camera, you're requesting the database, then you can expect that this camera will appear in the next update also. So of course you will get it as a customer. It will be sent to you some configuration file, but there is huge chance that it will be also updated in the upcoming update and release, which is as far as I can see, it's every 3-4 months we can meet another update. So that's
cool.
It's really important. And what is important, those updates are not only fixing some minor errors or problems, it's mostly adding some really new and really powerful features. Like one of the biggest, I remember when I was starting from 15 to 16, they released with the touch-up tool, which was like full additional software inside the software, actually. So
cool. Yeah. So moving on to the next one. So we've talked about the tiling functionality. So the tiling, you will define this before processing your 3D mesh, right? Your 3D model.
Exactly.
So that's how much space you are willing to use on your laptop. Then that will define the number of tiles, and then you are good to go. Exactly. Is it?
Yes, of course. You also are able to load KML file, for example, from Google Earth. to just specify the limit and area you would like to produce. So we are not only limited to our boundary box. That's also really useful and for anyone to use.
Yeah, especially
Also
if you have a project outline.
Yeah, exactly.
Like project brief.
Can be converted also from DGN file. So let's say the customer is just saying, okay, I have to have this strict borders, and it cannot be 1 centimeter bigger or smaller. That's not a problem because then you're loaded in the ContextCapture editor, which is opening everything actually, and convert it and then load it as a border here without a problem.
Okay. There is also, so is that the surface constraint or that is actually the boundary? Is there also the surface constraint or am I mixing things?
That's in the next one. So the geometric. Okay. So this kind of stems from, again, diverse environments. So a lot of the time people hitting seaside or rivers or stuff like that, you can put in surface constraints because we know that, you know, the sea can completely wreck a mesh. So yeah, you can make a mesh look really pretty just by adding in some surface constraints. It's quite good for, you know, larger scale meshes.
So what are one of the what are the most, maybe the most common situation where you will be using the surface constraint?
I can show an example actually.
That could be example,
maybe because that's an example. Of course, the surface constraint is one of those for the water, but you can actually do 3D constraint here, which is even more powerful. Not only, of course, it's required to create some model, but it's giving you full geometric information on the model. So it's possible then to I will show you just an example I took with a smartphone. Okay, it was few minutes spent here to get some level of detail. Of course, it depends how much you would like to get those details done. But then you see that it was hard for me, or also I didn't have that much time around. I was on a vacation and said, okay, you see that there's a problem here. We have some hole. But then I know how this shape should look like. I just throw it into the ContextCapture editor, and then I'm able to create a constraint with some, just a second, with some geometry to just
Yeah. I was going to say that I didn't really realize he had this example in his back pocket, so he's after going rogue and catching me off guard. So that's nice. It's actually a 3D shape to confine something to. So it's like, instead of even just doing a simple surface, you can do a complex object. So I didn't know you had that example. That's really good.
Yeah, that's, it took me around maybe 1 hour to just show it from the phone. So you see, it's possible to just merge those together, and that's.
So that was captured with your. So that was captured with your mobile phone, and then processed in ContextCapture, and then with the surface constraint. Explain me again what you did, because so you basically kind of like took out that object from the 3D mesh.
Yes, first of all, I created some production without a constraint, something like this. Let's say it was, of course, having some issues here, some with geometry. Then I just exported it, and because we are able to work on our native format, which I hope we will talk about later, next webinars, I am able to open it in ContextCapture editor, and I am able to create full functional 3D model, parametrical one, and then convert it to the 3D mesh, throw this 3D mesh information back again to the ContextCapture and say, okay, this should be looking like this. That's the shape you are aiming for, okay? And then software is just recreating this shape as I meant, as it should meant to be. So that could be, shape like this. But if let's say I will have full cathedral model, let's say here, because here was standing cathedral, and I have this model, I can even recreate it here as a mesh also.
That's what I've seen it done with a CAD model for a interior of a factory, and they had a CAD model and they had a 3D mesh, and it basically stretches the 3D mesh over the CAD model. It's really precise and really cool looking.
And what is also cool is you can throw the mesh into the thread here. You only take in one part of the factory, of course, take some reference on the spatial reference, so we know where it is. And then you are creating some part of will be done from the parametrical model, and then you will have this spot you're interested in from the photogrammetry. So this is also really good for documentation.
And so, Vic, tell me a bit more about the data, the camera calibration data when you're using your mobile phone, because we got actually Matt asking for that. So how do you do that? How do you define the sensor size and focal length and all these things?
In this case, that was one of my OnePlus camera here. It's only about to find the sensor size and focal length. A lot of those information can be found in the technical spreadsheet from the producer. Sometimes you will just have to dig in a little bit to just find what model of camera it's using, the particular phone.
But if you don't have that information, that's what he's asking. He has an Android, and sometimes it's hard to find that information. Is there a workflow to run in ContextCapture to determine the appropriate sensor size and focal length? Or how could he do that?
Those two values has to be found somewhere. The rest of the calibration is done during the retriangulation. So all the interior calibration of the camera will be done. Those are, of course, it will be. Of course, I couldn't just run it without those values. That's also possible. Of course, the result can be totally different, and we are talking here about the different size. But it's also possible. I did it a few times, especially because it's possible to even recreate a mesh out of the recording from the screen.
But I recommend, Matt, that you get in touch with support, and then they guide you or help you with that specific case. So cool. So we learn about the surface constraints. So what's the next
reference
in terms
manager.
of
the reference model? So I'll just speak about from my experience on this. So it's as we tile stuff, as we've seen, we can split a project into tiles. So if we're working on quite a big project or an existing project, we can actually update individual tiles. So let's say if you're working on a digital twin, right? And everyone knows that has to be updated continuously. So what you can do is you can pick, let's say you go out with a camera and you're working with oblique data, and you go out with a camera, a handheld one, and you can update the tiles of just that facade. So if you want to update all of the facades, you can just update those individual tiles without having to kick off the entire thing again. So that's something I've seen that comes in quite handy. Swavic is probably going to say something else, but it's
just like you can see here. You're able to assign a task to one of your employees, for example, or for you just to remind you have full quality control model here to go around to attach some tags around the tiles. That's it's not only about the management but also for the reduction.
Yeah, it's a lifesaver in a big complex project, and especially with so many people talking about digital twins, that's a nice workflow to have underneath your belt. And there's not much to say. I think that's the most important thing there. I think. Yes, it's quite good.
Exactly.
I was going to say the next up is the processing settings, and that has a lot in it that we should talk about.
Yes.
Probably that. So there's a lot there.
Let me just go back to the last project actually.
So let's try to simplify the settings for people that are not familiar with ContextCapture. Actually, that is a good point, because as someone that is not familiar with the software, or that are familiar with software that are way more simple than ContextCapture, this is it might seem overwhelming, but it's actually one of our strengths is the flexibility of the workflow. So actually, also we can say training. Exactly, I was gonna say that. So so ContextCapture, so all bundles at Virtuosity come with dedicated support and training. So that will be Swavic, and the rest of the team will help you getting up to speed with ContextCapture, whether that is from a workflow point of view that you want to learn the workflow, or you have specific project requirements. So the team will assess your requirements and needs, and then they will define a plan, a training and support plan for specifically and curated for you, tailored for you. Sorry. So that's good to know. When we talk about all these settings and all this flexibility in the workflow, it might seem overwhelming for some that are not as familiar as with photogrammetry workflows as you guys. So maybe simplify the settings for me.
We'll quickly go through them, Slavik. The first two are well, obviously your matching pairs. You can make it for structural aerial data sets and focus on ROI. Basically, that's just saying what type of algorithm you would like when it's processing the mesh. We don't really need to talk about that. The second one is obviously you can use thermal stuff. That's that's pretty grand. I don't have to explain that. So if you have thermal imagery, again, we can
That
use
was
it.
quite hot topic when we had the webinar for digital twins. That was very like
Exactly.
It was asked a lot about the thermal imagery. Yeah.
Of course, there is a whole workflow to kind of align the thermal and normal imagery, but it's of course possible to be done here. And then you're able to watch, let's say, whole production and just change from RGB to the thermal channel. So that's also really important.
Yeah. Precision. Cool. It's really, like we don't need to go through that. If you want to talk about it, generally, like we don't really. 90% of people, if they're really confident with their data, you don't have to touch much of these settings. To be honest, like if you're really confident on your capture, you don't have to touch these. Something like, let's say, the hole filling is really nice for, again, those weak coverage areas. So if you have an area with just weak coverage, or if there's many like mirrored surfaces, so you're capturing a building, there's a lot of mirrors or glass on it. That's quite a nice setting to use. And again, in those digital twin environments, that could pop up. And I guess you could mix that, combine it into geometric simplification, so that those two kind of go together. So what it would do in geometric simplification, it would just simplify the geometries, make bigger triangles in the mesh. So if you're tackling like facades or buildings in a city, that's going to be quite nice, and it can just make a nicer, cleaner model. So you don't need that super complicated type of thing. So that's a nice setting. What Slavik's going to underneath is,
will that sorry Kev, will that have any impact on the final accuracy of the 3D mesh?
A bit, yeah, because obviously, well, accuracy and like a bit of obviously will affect the final result, but it's it's what is the final result for? Are you looking for
it's
a
about
high
the balance?
like it's a nice balance, and you got to be very careful there with your balance.
But that's important that you have this tool and you have possibility that the software just let you decide, because you're the operator, you know what you are doing, and you will decide at the end.
Okay. Ultimately, we give the control to the users. So ultimately, is their decision, is their choice, depending on what is the final application, obviously. Okay.
Exactly.
I guess you could keep, if we want to keep tying things in together, the blockwise, the color equalization mode. So this is quite useful if you're capturing at different times of the day, or if you want to smooth out exposure across the mesh. So like, if you're surveying at different times of the day or even different times of the year, that's quite a nice little setting to have, especially if you're doing continuous surveying, or it gets cloudy or sunny. That's another thing that's underneath your belt that you can use to really improve the final quality of the mesh. Again, it's this whole, we're not just a black box. You can get your fingers into everything if you wanted to. And let's say the untextured regional surfaces, how to explain that? That's like if you're capturing the top of a table and we're going to mesh the underside, and the underside, if there's, it could be just black or gray, so you can kind of add the top of the table color to underneath. That's the way the way I would explain it, to be brutally honest. The texture source, that's something, we were talking about our hybrid meshes that are really popular. So you have the option to have photos for your texture, smart, which is a combination between the point cloud and the photos, again if you have areas that aren't covered or not uniform. And then obviously you can use the point cloud only for texture, but that would only be if you had no photos. It's very rare in that instance, like it really is. And the resolution, again, it's something you can mess with. It's really up to you and what you want to do.
But in general terms, if you have, if you wouldn't be tackling all these settings for every processing you do. So this will be, once you get familiar with your workflow, this will be something that it will be like an ABC. But basically, it means that we allow users, well, ContextCapture enables users to have full control over different settings, whereas other software will behave more as a black box, right?
Box.
That's what I got.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's what people say to us all the time. So
Okay.
we're just parroting what people say. Swap, do you maybe want to go, since we're talking about versatility and how we hardware agnostic, do you want to go on to some of the outputs, just the default?
Of course.
Yeah, because that's been for me, it's been also quite requested by customers in terms of like the interoperability, both for Bentley software and outside of Bentley software.
Yes,
so maybe
if
you can cover that.
It can be, of course, covered. So maybe I can actually cover this if you would like to. So starting with let's say typical type of the data we would like to produce. In our case, we are mostly interested in 3D mesh. So we are not limited to any any orthophoto and 2D data. We are of course able to produce 3D point cloud, which will be dense, will be of course based on the photogrammetry, and this is only about when and what we would like to do after. Of course, most time we'll use 3D mesh and use our whole advantage, but sometimes maybe we need to combine this point cloud, the different point cloud, of course, to create some output. Of course, we are able to create orthophoto, and 3D mesh for retouching was actually that's the legacy tool from update 15 when we didn't have a retouch tool. Right now, it's rather unused. Same for the reference models and geometric constraints, actually. Okay.
This is where it gets fun.
Yes. So
there's a lot to talk
so
about.
there's the list.
We've been 35 minutes live already, so I would say maybe let's summarize the interoperability. Kevin, I would like to ask about that. Sorry, Sobik, while we go back to you in a sec, but from an interoperability point of view, what do we provide to our customers in terms of like what's the value?
So we're not going to limit you. We won't limit you to just Bentley formats. Obviously, we would still push the Bentley formats, and they are 3MX and 3SM. They're multi-resolution, so it means if you're using a large data set, when you zoom in, more detail, zoom out, less detail. But like we can produce to all your kind of AutoCAD stuff, your FBX, your OBJ, your even for 3D printing, we can go towards that. Cesium, it's no problem at all. And there's a lot of different. I'll keep it short. There's a lot of different settings. You can see below, a lot of the models are WebGL compatible. So if you want to throw them in a web server, display them online, just drop them in. There's also, if you're tackling really, again, large scale meshes, there's an option called a unique mesh or cross tiles. And this basically, it's the way you would load the mesh in. It makes it really, really smooth and nice. So I think, I can't remember how many different outputs we have, but basically what we're saying again is you don't have to put it into a Bentley software at the end if you don't want to. We literally can tackle nearly any client request that we've come across. I don't think there's been one format that we can't really go out to be honest. Yeah. Because there's even more formats when you bring it into the editor. There's quite a plethora of stuff.
If you would like to work on the CAD software, especially on our native one, but what is also important in interoperability within Bentley software, that your colleague working on the road will open the same data set natively in open roads. Your colleague working on the platform will open your results on OpenPlant or in any different kind of our software without any loss of data and with full optimization. And that's important. So we can incorporate each branch existing on the market actually with the same data without any issues with sending, of course, with using of our project-wise system, which is also a totally different story, but there's many ways for us to coordinate data. And of course, if you have guys working on, some let's say gaming environment, you would like to create some meshes for the game, then also OBJ wavefront open in 3ds Max or Maya software, which is meant especially for such type of graphic, no problem. No problem.
So we have Dakota here, who is a very well-known customer. Hey, Dakota.
My favorite one.
Really good to see you here. He's asking, is there a single export format that only includes the highest LOD with an OBJ, FFX, or 3MX? That's a good question. And there is silence.
No, just to understand it properly. There is probably what you are mentioning here is this unique mesh, which will load everything at the highest quality at the end. So you are not loading the tiles one after one. Unique mesh will, of course, optimize the process so strongly that it will load the highest level of detail. And that would be 3MX. But if you would like to go for highest detail outside our native format, then I would always recommend OBJ outside
the Bentley ecosystem,
the Bentley,
3MS,
exactly.
3MX.
If you would like to go out, then OBJ.
Okay, but otherwise, just send an email to so we can you can guys talk about it offline. Cool, thanks Dakota for joining us live today. So is there anything else that we should be covering in terms of the 3D meshing capabilities, guys? Because we've been
40 minutes, I think we should be.
Yeah, we still have a good amount of people live surpassing, so there's definitely something interesting for our audience. So is there any other things, like one of the actually questions, and every time that I post something about engineering grade 3D meshes, I always get the question about accuracy, and this is maybe something we should cover in a topic specifically for accuracy. But if we can actually have a brief explanation on, once you have your 3D mesh, how do you know about the accuracy of your results?
I would love to explain it as a surveyor.
Yeah. You can see how many pages we produce a quality report, and it is a hell of a lot of pages. There's no way we'd be maybe 3 hours.
This is what is the best thing is that you don't have to create it by your own. You just can generate it automatically. Of course, that will of course exist in each other software. That's the typical thing. But once you're using, of course, proper techniques with the ground control points, or in case with the point clouds, you will get a charts, as you see here, look like histograms, which will show the number of points per distance to the scan. So that will be a statistical redistribution of the distance and the quality of the let's say overall fitting the photogrammetry to the scan. You will see the normal. So let's say you have full option to show the statistics to not only for you but also to the customer. And I would say that this chart is really a really natural way to analyze this data.
I think it would be interesting to add this as a single topic, maybe for the end of the year. Actually, sounds like a topic we could all have some popcorn when we're getting closer to Christmas time. So, what is going to be the topic in next 2 weeks, Kevin? You were very enthusiastic about the next one.
I think we should go more towards the consumption-based workflow. So that's where you would bring in a mesh into something like our editor, which is contained within ContextCapture, and that's then really where the separation becomes between us and the competition. So it's all the stuff and the workflows you can address within the editor of ContextCapture. So that's going to be
my favorite part.
Yeah, we actually had a webinar with Dakota, who is hope still online, but we have a webinar that he covered the workflow from ContextCapture to ContextCapture editor. So we'll basically do a live in 2 weeks from now, covering that consumption of the 3D mesh in the ContextCapture editor. So that's going to be a very interesting topic, because loads of our customers, the ContextCapture editor is not very well known for some reason, but it's very powerful. So everyone that has got a training with you, Sławik, have basically fallen in love with ContextCapture editor.
I hope so. They should. This is like the best part.
Well, Dakota, I'm taking this from Dakota, and another couple of guys were like, saying like ContextCapture editor was amazing. And I think there is, that's going to be quite an interesting topic, as I said. So, great. Any other questions that I haven't answered? I will be following up on the comments. And I will be sharing the information, the webinars, and the links that I mentioned in the event chat. So I'll send the link to that if you guys haven't joined that event group. And I think that's all from my side. You can still scan the QR code and get a trial for ContextCapture or a demo with our amazing team. Kevin, Sławik, thank you so much for today. Any other comments or?
No, I've taken up too much time with these people.
Okay. Thank you so much, guys. Exactly.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you. Stay safe. Have a good week. Bye.
Come on.
Bye.